Welcome to the Resume Workshop. My name is Jesse Preston. I'm an employment specialist. Quick shout out to our host, Works4You Employment. Let's get started. In today's Resume Workshop, we are going to define resumes. We're going to go over the three different types of resumes. We're going to talk about different skill types. We're going to go over the T-bar method. We're going to touch on applicant tracking systems. And we're going to go over some tips for editing as well as formatting. A resume is a document for the purpose of introduction. It goes over your skills, your experience, your accomplishments. At the end of the day, it's a summary about your professional journey. It's used as an introduction to employers so that you can get an interview. It's considered to be a living document in the sense that as you grow, this document will consistently change over time. So it's always a good idea to update your resume periodically. It's great for applying for jobs, contract positions, even volunteering. Resumes have 6 essential sections: your name, your contact information, which is your phone number, email, and LinkedIn, if you have a LinkedIn, followed by the title of the job you are applying for. This has replaced the objective statement, which used to be on resumes. Your professional profile, which is a summary of your qualifications. The skills and experience that you've obtained at past employment or volunteer experiences. And finishing up is education and training. Now, there are different optional sections that can go along with your resume, such as publications if you have any, awards that you may have gotten, and I'm including scholarships in that as well, projects that you've worked on, knowledge areas, and some recruiters and employment specialists are divided on if references available upon request is essential anymore. I'm still of the mind that it's a nice way to end the document, but again, it is an optional section. The first and most common type of resume that we're going to talk about is the chronological resume. And it's one of the easier ones. It's very easy to create, update. It's most liked by employers because it shows a very easy to see career progression. It lists your experience in reverse chronological order. It's an ideal format for people who have stayed in a similar industry for a period of time. So let's take a look at the resume. You can see very clearly that he started off doing some cleaning jobs, and then from there he progressed to others as his experience progressed. Functional resumes, in contrast, focus on your skills and your strengths and less on your work history. They highlight transferable skills. It's ideal format for individuals who have gaps in their history, are moving between several different types of industries. The drawback is that many recruiters don't like this particular resume. There's a perception that people who use this type of resume are hiding something in their work history. Now, if we take a look at this particular resume by Shirley U. Jest, great name, we see that she's highlighting her medical office administration skills and her office skills. And that's because her recent job, most recent job, is working at a real estate agent. There's also a 3-year gap between her current job and her previous job. But she's obviously applying for a medical type position. So she's gone from one industry to the next, and now she's heading back. The combination or hybrid resume is actually one of my favorites, and it brings together both the chronological as well as the functional resume and focuses both on your skills as well as your experience. Many recruiters like this format because it shows the context in which your skills were developed, as well as emphasizing key features within your history that are relevant to the job. If done well, this can be one of the most versatile and most powerful resume types there is. The downside is that it takes longer to customize. We'll take a look at this example by Serenade. Serenade? Loves her job. So she was working as a social service worker, and she wanted to highlight her mental health experience. Might not necessarily have had it from her last role, so she's using this as a way to bring out experience from a previous job, She's also highlighting things that don't necessarily fit in any one particular job, but things like her community network connections. So memberships of the local immigration partnership, knowledge of Toronto 211, Toronto Central Healthline, for example, and that's where her focus is. And then she jumps into her work history and goes into depth on what she did in those particular jobs. So let's talk about content. So let's talk about content. There are two types of skills. There's hard skills. These are things that are teachable and measurable. They're almost always the tasks that the hiring manager needs done. There's soft skills, and these are types of skills that are learned on the job. They're very difficult to teach, but we have a tendency to learn over time. They're also very difficult to measure. Example, can you really measure how nice a person is? We know that they're a nice person, but we don't really have a metric to show how nice they are. Hard skills, in contrast, you can figure out how fast it takes someone to stock a shelf or sort out a filing cabinet or even run a computer program. There's three main types of bullet points that are listed in the different jobs. There's three different ways that you can write bullet points. One is called the responsibility-based bullet point, and this is basically, what were your tasks and duties? What were you assigned to do? So this is what you're responsible for, but it doesn't actually inform the employer how you contributed or how good you were at those tasks, just that those were the ones that were assigned. There's the achievement-based, which shows your accomplishments and your work. It's good in combination with metrics, and this speaks to what you did and accomplished on the role. So this speaks to your work specifically. Outcome-based. So this shows that you have an understanding of what your role is and focuses on the outcome of your work rather than what you put into it or what you accomplished. It focuses on things like what you increased and what you decreased. Soft skill integration. This, I would say, is the biggest crime on resumes today. Oftentimes, job seekers don't quite know what to do with this list of soft skills that employers put on the job posting. So they end up regurgitating them back in either the professional profile or elsewhere in the resume. And if you take a look at this list below, team player, organized, good listener, detail-oriented problem solver, great skills. I give you that. But I don't actually see them in action. I have no idea if this person actually has the skills or are they just listing them and throwing them back. So how do we address this? Well, it's simple. Here are the same soft skills as listed in the previous slide, now distributed throughout the resume and used in their proper contexts. So this person was a community worker with over 10 years experience and worked in a multidisciplinary team. That speaks volumes more than a team player. It tells me what kind of team they were working on. It tells me that they had to deal with people with different skill sets. So it's not even the same team in the sense that all the people have the same skills. Skipping down to the second bullet point, we see active listening was used during an intake process. Now, to say someone can listen doesn't give any context, but if it's using listening skills in the context of doing an intake process, you can actually visually see a person sitting at a desk, listening, taking notes, and asking questions. It gives much greater depth to the bullet point of saying can do an intake process because it shows what soft skills you use in that environment as well. The takeaway that you should get from this is don't just regurgitate back soft skills. Use them to illustrate your understanding of the role. Action verbs. You want to start off each bullet point with an action verb. And I have a whole bunch of them listed below, but by no means is this anywhere near an exhausted list. There's good ones in there such as analyzed, contracted, executed, coordinated, generated, implemented, managed, monitored, organized, planned, prepared, oversaw, sold, served. The list is endless. The point here is you want to illustrate your skills through your action verb, particularly your hard skills. So we see from the example below, tracked expenses in the general ledger, and accurately processed accounts payable. So what is this person doing? Well, they're keeping track of expenses. So they're tracking, that is the hard skill they're using. Expenses on the general ledger, that's another skill that they're using, which is use of the general ledger. And accurately, accurate is considered to be a soft skill. Process to accounts payable. So basically they're giving out money to people they owe. Earlier I spoke about outcome statements, and here's how you create them. So first, outcomes are created around things you either increase or you decrease. You can increase things like revenues, profit margins, or things you decrease, time, cost, risk, etc. It's best to only use maybe 3 to 5 outcome statements throughout your entire resume. It's really effective when you just use a few as opposed to things that you really want to emphasize getting lost in your resume. Supply numbers and percentages if possible. Good outcome verbs can include increased, decreased, improved, enriched, augmented, developed. I don't have this on the slide, but even created is a good one as well. And the format you want to use for this kind of statement is to start off with the outcome, particularly the outcome verb, followed by whatever the outcome is. Then you want to say by or through, and then you speak to the action in which you took to achieve it. So for example, decreased risk of cross-contamination by following food safety procedures and wearing the appropriate PPE. Now, we don't think of PPE in terms of food preparation, but that could be a hairnet, it could be gloves, it could be an apron. You want to start with the job posting. All job postings have 3 major components. One is information about the company. This is very useful information, but more useful later on in the process when you're looking at things like interviews and wanting to know what questions to ask. Tasks, duties, and responsibilities. This is stuff that the hiring manager is specifically requesting from human resources that needs done. Basically, it's the work. The last section is the qualifications, and this is what HR and recruiters screen for. It's the type of person that they need to perform the role. So you want to make sure that that information is right up front, visible for the recruiter, so that they can go, aha, I think I'll call this person in for an interview. This is possibly the most important slide in the entire deck. It's called the T-bar method. And it's a systematic way of making sure that your resume is addressing all of the employer concerns from the posting in your resume. And you start by taking 5 to 10 job postings of the same job, but from different companies to create this chart. You're going to notice commonalities, like maybe they all have the same requirements for technology or same education. But the idea here is that you want to start to condense things down into a list of qualifications and tasks that the industry has. This is great in the sense that you don't have to spend as much time later customizing your resume as much as you can focus on that individual company. So again, this is for creating a base resume for a particular type of job. So you might consider getting a bunch of postings for customer service. Now there's a bunch of titles when it comes to customer service. You can have customer service, you can have customer service rep, you can have client representative, you can have guest experience representative. They may just call it customer service. There's a number of different titles, and it's all going to depend on the company and the brand in which that company is operating in. Next, you want to make sure that your resume is a match for the qualifications and the tasks that the employer has put in the job posting. So as you can see below from the graph, you have the professional profile is a mirror towards the summary of qualifications, and the tasks that the employer wants, you want to answer those within your jobs below. The idea is that the recruiter will read the professional profile, say, this is the type of candidate we're looking for. Let's read on into the experiences and see if they actually have experience doing the tasks that we require get done. This is a job posting for a customer service rep. And we can see from the qualifications, they're looking for someone who has post-secondary education, has minimum 3 years experience in contact center, has excellent verbal and written communication skills, very good with the telephone, and has certain tech skills, so they can operate MS Office, email, a customer relations management database. That's what CRM stands for. And they actually tell you which one they have, which is Salesforce. They want this person to deliver accurate information about programs and services, capture records, and I'm assuming they're going to want to put those in the CRM. And they want to have someone who can generate timely reports and track data. So we'll take these one at a time, starting with the qualifications. So again, they're looking for post-secondary education, someone with years of experience, and someone who is good verbal as well as written communication skills. As you can see from the professional profile, it mirrors what they're looking for. Maybe not quite in the same order, but it's generally the same information. So they start off by saying they have 5 years experience in a professional contact center environment. They go on to talk about not the fact that they have post-secondary education, but they actually name what it is. Diploma in marketing and business, and then they go on to other certifications that are useful and applicable to this job. The next bullet point I think is really important. Many people like to point out that they're bilingual, but it's one thing to know another language, it's another thing to be able to offer service in multiple languages. And I think that's really important, especially in today's economy. It's not just about the fact that you know another language, it's the fact that you can render service in that language. Then they finish by saying, yes, I have all the technical skills that you're looking for. You may have noticed I didn't address any of the communication skills within the professional profile. That's because the document itself, the resume and cover letter, already speaks to a person's ability to create written communication. In terms of verbal communication, the person works in a contact center environment where most of their job would entail verbal communication. So when you take a look deeper into the resume, the question becomes is, how long did they stay in those roles? Because if they aren't good at that particular skill, they wouldn't have lasted very long. So this is where longevity in a company can really help out and simplify things in your professional profile. Now we can see from the tasks that this employer wants done that they're looking for someone who can accurately give out information on their programs and services, as well as keeping records and tracking and reporting data. So on the resume, it has to respond to that. Now, the applicant is a person who used to work for ABC Telecom, and they talk about a number of things. They talk about their ability to sell and do promotions, which kind of speaks to what is being asked, but not directly. But their next point really does speak to this. So they say, resolved customer complaints and inquiries about billings by providing accurate information on service charges. So in this bullet point, you can see that they are, in fact, talking to elements of the program. And then they go on to say that they did things like collect data for capturing records when they're setting up customer accounts. And they also speak to the fact that they're using a CRM database. And then in the next job, they actually address the next point, which is tracking and reporting on real estate trends for agents. So it's important to note that not every single bullet point must mirror from the job posting, but at least everything from those points must be addressed in your resume. Once upon a time, recruiters used to spend an average of 6 seconds per resume because they would have to go through a pile of around 300 to 400 resumes. Now, recruiters don't do that anymore because applicant tracking systems do all that hard work for them. They simply enter into the database the skills that they're looking for, and qualified candidates pop out. So it's important that we don't use headers and footers because not all applicant tracking systems read headers and footers. You want to use common section titles. It helps the applicant tracking system parse or extract information correctly into the various different fields within their system. So things like experience, education, profile, skills, qualifications, all those are important. Applicant tracking systems prioritize hard skills and designations over soft skills. If you're looking for, say, an electrician, you're going to type the certification of the electrician that you want because that will render you really good hits. But if you type soft skills such as team player, you're going to get back most of your database. So again, it's really important to make sure that you have those designations and those hard skills within your resume. Now, let's say you don't have one of those skills or a qualification. It's still important to say that you're working towards them, just because the applicant tracking system will still pick up on the name of the designation and still put your resume in for consideration. So when it comes to formatting, there's a number of things that are really important. So you want to opt for a clean, logical, easily understood format. Your resume is no good if the employer can't look at it and understand the sections and how it works and how it runs. Most resumes are anywhere between 1 to 2 pages. I like a page and a half, but that again is a preference. But you really don't want more than 2 pages. No photographs. This is something for your LinkedIn account. And the reason that it's okay for the LinkedIn account, but not the resume, is that on the LinkedIn account, if they're looking at your LinkedIn from your resume, they've already had the opportunity to read through your resume, get a sense for your skills. You want to gear your resume towards your audience. Use similar language and lingo to what's in the job posting. You want to revise and tailor your resume to each job that you're applying to. And as you're creating your resume, you want to make sure that you're using the same date format, you're using the same tenses, because sometimes when people are updating, they'll use different formats over a period of time. So if you're just updating your resume, you want to be consistent with what you used before. If you're changing it, you have to make sure it's all changed. When it comes to action verbs, some people use INGs, some people use EDs. So some people use present or past tense. You want to generally keep it the same. And I know some people have the argument that you can use current jobs in present tense and previous jobs in past tense. The issue with that is that when you're updating your resume, you have to go through and change them all anyway. At the end of the day, no recruiter will eliminate you for having a present and then past tense, or currently all the current tense or all past tense. They may eliminate you if you're inconsistent all over the place. When it comes to editing, you want to do a spell check, but not just a computer spell check. You actually want another person to take a look at your resume. And the reason is spell checkers can tell you if your word is written wrong. It can't tell you if you used the correct word. I know someone who submitted something where they intended to say the word popular, and they actually wrote the word poplar. Poplar is a tree. Popular is something that a lot of people like. Again, both are correct words, but they're worlds apart and they're only one letter difference. When you're putting together your resume, you want to make sure that you're not overstating your experience, because this can set up a candidate for unreasonable expectations on the job. Remember, you're applying for a job, but you're also saying you can deliver on that. You want to cut the fluff. Some people sit there and say, well, I've got very good customer service skills, or I've got strong admin skills. At the end of the day, filling your resume full of fluff words, which is basically words that give credit to another word, but don't actually add anything to the conversation in of themselves, really expand out a resume, but make it harder for employers to actually see and identify good skills that they can use with. It's better to cut them out and add more good content, or more content that goes in depth. Finally, you want to be descriptive in the points that you're using. Example, saying that you served customers in a restaurant doesn't go as far as saying manage the dinner rush after a home game. Serving customers is something that you can see and understand, but managing the dinner rush after a home game comes with a whole host of other skills that aren't even stated and that are immediately implied. You can also see mentally in your mind a restaurant packed full of people and it's booming, and servers going around from table to table taking orders and dropping off food, and it's really rushed. But you might not see that in a restaurant that doesn't have that kind of environment. So using more descriptive language that identifies the circumstances you're in is more ideal for your resume as well. So I thought I would end with my top 11 resume tips. Number one, your resume and cover letter should be the same document, and your contact information should be used as a letterhead in your cover letter and both pages of your resume. This shows that it's the same document, and it's easier for recruiters and for yourself if you're uploading only one document as opposed to multiple documents. The recruiter doesn't have to save twice as many documents. At the end of the day, it's a much easier process. You want to save your file as your name, the job in which you're applying for, and the company for quick and easy reference, not only for yourself, but for the recruiter as well. Imagine sitting there as a recruiter and you get 50 resumes with the title name resume. Now you have to go through each one, retitle them, and then save them. It is a real pain when you want to just move forward really quickly. Always put your job titles before the company name. At the end of the day, this is about your skills, not about the company in which you worked for. So you want to put forward what you did, and then the company gives credit to the work that you did. So it's one thing to say that you worked as an accountant in some company, ABC Financial, but if you work for, say, in a company called McDonald's as an accountant, it makes a big difference. But if you use the term McDonald's first, it implies that you were maybe a cashier or a person flipping burgers, because that's the first thing that jumps to our mind when we hear McDonald's in terms of a resume. You want to use an odd number of bullet points in your resume. This is a marketing concept that came out a number of years ago where the mind literally interprets this as ... meaning there's more to you than what has been currently written. Next, and your resume with references available upon request. I know that a lot of people differ on this point, but again, it shows that this is the end of your resume, and it's literally saying there's no more after this. So that's why I like it. It's a nice way of saying the end. A good gauge to see if your resume is tailored enough to a job in an industry is how long does it take you to customize it from application to application. Generally speaking, it should only take you 30 to 45 minutes to crank out a completely customized resume and cover letter. If it takes you longer than that, your base resume need a little bit more work to make it tailored towards the industry and the company. Or you're applying for jobs that your base resume isn't actually meant to be used to apply for. So you might want to consider going back to the T-bar method or even creating a second type of resume for that particular role. If you have two industries and you want to use a chronological based resume, but you're going from one industry back to the other, you might consider breaking up your experience by using relevant experience and additional experience, or the type of experience for the company in which you're applying for. So say customer service experience and additional experience. This way you can showcase positions higher up in your resume that are more relevant to the job you're applying for. All right, 2 tips for new grads. It's okay to list your education near the top. If this is your best selling feature, then you should use it. Also, if you have courses and school projects that are relevant for the job that you're applying for, use them. You have that under your belt. If it's a good selling feature, use it. For graphic designers, I always recommend treating your resume as a design project in itself. And you want to have links to your profile, because at the end of the day, this is a sample that's being put forth towards employers, and it should be treated as such. So just a quick summary. We went over what a resume was. We went over the 3 types of resumes. We talked about content, skills, and outcomes. We went over the T-bar method for creating a good resume. We talked about applicant tracking systems, and then we finished with formatting, editing, as well as other tips. My name's Jesse Preston. I'm an employment specialist. If you enjoyed watching, consider subscribing, hitting that bell for more notifications. Shout out to Works4You Employment for hosting us, and have a great day.